Hey everybody, welcome back Between the Cracks. I am your hostess with the mostest, Jen, and today we are going to look into the origins of the troubled teen industry. Mainly, I will be talking about Sinon. However, in my research and with all the help of Unsilenced, which is never ending and always appreciated, the troubled teen industry goes back to 1912. So we're going to start with that. Let me just share this screen here. Okay. So this is okay. So this is the timeline, thanks to Unsilenced. You can see right there. So I want to make sure I have my trigger warning because you never know who is going to be triggered by something that I say, and I want to be sensitive to that. So in 1912, Helen T Deo, she is a special education teacher, and she founded the first Devereaux School in Philadelphia. She began to acquire properties and expanded her operations until she officially established Devereaux Foundation as a nonprofit organization in 1938. It expanded through the years to 13 states and is one of the oldest nonprofit providers of behavioral health care in the United States. The organization markets itself as a behavioral health organization. It works with developmental disabilities, emotional and behavioral disorders, and mental illnesses. Its operations now include psychiatric hospitals, residential treatment centers, group homes, respite care, supported living, foster care, special education, and vocational education. Throughout the years, the survivors tell a different story about Devereaux, not surprising. Many alleging abuse, neglect, and horrible conditions. A review of DHS records across multiple states corroborated the survivors' stories with multiple violations and, in some cases, the removal of children from facilities. So, I want to share this with you because I was quite surprised to find this out. Devereaux is still in business. So their locations, Arizona, California, Connecticut, Florida, Georgia, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania, and Texas. So it looks like it's advanced behavioral health in Arizona. The ages are birth through lifespan. So this is one of those places where you can just drop your baby off and leave them there for their whole life. California is 18 and up. Not that that's any better. The Glen Home School in Connecticut, 10 to 22 in grades 5 to 12 plus. Delaware, Devereaux School-based services, preschool through adulthood. So these are all Florida, Devereaux Advanced Behavioral Health. They have 2 locations, birth through lifespan. Georgia, in Kennesaw, Georgia. What's the other one? Sierra and Orlando. Kennesaw, Georgia, birth to 21. Massachusetts and Rhode Island. Looks like it's Rutland, Massachusetts. And that again, birth through lifespan. New Jersey, Cherry Hill, New Jersey. Wow, I am familiar with that city. 5 age 5 through lifespan. That is mental. New York, in Red Hook, New York, 5 through lifespan. And then they have one in Mount Kisco as well, 12-month day school. I wonder if that just means that it's a year-round day school. I don't know. I'll do more information on that. Berwyn, Pennsylvania, adult services, 21 through lifespan. And then Devereaux in Westchester, Pennsylvania, ages 2 to 21, because you know how troubled 2-year-olds can be. Devereaux Cares in Downingtown, Pennsylvania, ages 5 through 21. Devereaux Plea in Pittsburgh, children, adolescents, and adults. School-based partial hospital program and respite care for youth, and formal friendship, peer and socialization, and recreational programming for adults. What about that word programming? That doesn't sit very good. Newfoundland, Pennsylvania, so this is the Poconos, age 2 through lifespan. Okay. Devereaux, Southeastern Pennsylvania, Autism Resource Center in Westchester, Pennsylvania, 6 months through adulthood. Diagnostic services, feeding evaluations and treatment, behavioral interventions, social skill classes, SOAR young adult program, adult services, sparklers, early education program, training and consultation services, support group, and HIKE program. Diagnoses, autism spectrum disorder and other behavioral concerns. Okay, autism spectrum disorder is not a behavioral concern, including attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, oppositional defiant disorder, anxiety, and feeding disorders. These adolescents and adults. And then we have Texas in League City, ages 6 to 17, and this is an RTC. It says educational services, but there's never really, from my research and experience, actual education. Most of us have GEDs. Yeah, diagnoses, intellectual and developmental disabilities, autism spectrum disorder. So it really looks to me like they are preying hard on the families of children who are on the autism spectrum. And that's disturbing because it's not a troubled disorder. It's not, it's just not right. Like it's wrong. It's bad. And they're still in business. So if anyone feels like they want to, reach out to Devereaux, please feel free to do so. Now we're going to go back to Unsilenced's list of timeline. So grateful for them, for all that they've done. Okay. So 1915, the Sonia Shankman Orthogenic School. This sounds really disturbing to me, so I'm going to go ahead and put this there now. Founded in 1915, the Sonia Shankman Orthogenic School, also known as the Orthogenic School or informally as the O School, is a residential treatment center, a day school, and a therapeutic school for children and adolescents typically classified as emotionally challenged. I would really like to know what emotionally challenged means, because I'm pretty sure that all adolescents are emotionally challenged, partially thanks to hormones, and their environments. Okay. The Orthogenic School specialized in the treatment of youth with behavioral and emotional problems. The well-known and controversial psychoanalytic theorist Bruno Bettelhelm served as the director of the Orthogenic School during the mid-20th century, from 1944 to 1973. During the time he spent there, the school became relatively well-known for treating children with autism, a field in which Bettelheim studied. He was considered the pioneer of milieu therapy with his work at the school. You have to do some researching on the Shankman Orthogenic School. Sources vary as to whether Bettelheim's degree was in art history or philosophy. Wow. It was not in psychology. Ralph Tyler, who first brought Bettelheim to the University of Chicago, stated in 1990 that he assumed that Bettelheim had 2 PhDs, one in art history and the other in psychology. And in some of his writings, Bettelheim himself implied that he wrote a dissertation on the philosophy of education. A 1995 article in the UK's The Independent stated that Bettelheim, despite claims to the contrary, possessed no psychology qualifications of any sort. A 1997 article in the Chicago Tribune stated, but when the the directorship of the Orthogenic School became available, he evidently gambled that because of the war, no one would be able to check on his credentials. Wow, this guy sounds like he's right up there with Chuck Diedrich and L. Ron Hubbard. Let's see. So they wouldn't be able to check on his credentials when his transcript was posthumously examined. It showed that he had taken but 3 introductory courses in the field. Later directors and some counselors at the Orthogenic School see Bettelheim merely as using corporal punishments, even though he stated that such was counterproductive, while many, but not all resident students report seeing rage and out-of-control violence on Bettelheim's part. Richard Pollock's 1997 biography of Bettelheim states that 2 separate women reported that Bettelheim fondled their breasts and those other female students at the school while he was ostensibly apologized to each for beating them. He apologized for beating them. Yeah, that's abuser behavior for sure. A 1990 Chicago Tribune article reported of the 19 alumni of the Orthogenic School interviewed for this story. Some are still bitterly angry at Bettelheim 20 or 30 years after leaving the institution. Others say their stay did them good, and they express gratitude for having had the opportunity to be at the school. All agree that Bettelheim frequently struck his young and vulnerable patients. What is equally significant is that none of Bettelheim's successors at the Orthogenic School now contradicts these reports. The same article reported abusive treatment such as that Bettelheim pulled an adolescent girl out of a shower and hit and berated her in front of dormitory mates, that he summoned another teenage girl from the toilet stall for a thrashing, that he did not allow a male student to take asthma medication on the theory that asthma was psychologically caused. Ronald Angress wrote in a commentary magazine essay, I lived for years in terror of his beatings, in terror of his footsteps in the dorms, in abject animal terror. Okay. So, Mr. Bettelheim is a monster, was a monster. He clearly passed away in the 90s. I didn't find anything stating that they were still in business, but this is, 1917, Boys Town. And I don't know how many people on here remember the Spencer Tracy movie, Boys Town, because it's about this. Boys Town was founded on December 12, 1917, as an orphanage for boys. Originally known as the City of Little Men, the organization was begun by Edward J. Flanagan, a Roman Catholic priest, while he was working in the Diocese of Omaha. Using a loan of $90, he first rented a home at 25th and Dodge Streets in Omaha to care for 5 boys, the first of whom was named John Creese. From these beginnings, the City of Little Men developed new juvenile care methods in 20th century America. emphasizing social preparation as a model for public boys' homes worldwide. You know how that worked out. Maybe some of you don't. Eventually, their methods expanded to care for troubled teens, and they expanded to include girls in their facilities. Because that's what we need in Boys Town, girls. Reminds me of ADP. The national headquarters of Boys Town is in the village of Boys Town, Nebraska, which is listed on the National Register of Historic Places and was designated a National Historic Landmark on February 4th, 1985. Doesn't surprise me because Nancy Reagan was a huge supporter, very outspoken supporter of the troubled teen industry, for those that didn't know. Facilities include the Hall of History, dedicated to the history of Boys Town, the restored home of Father Flanagan, the Dowden Memorial Chapel, and the Chambers Protestant Chapel, and the Leon Myers Stamp Center. The latter provides historical stamp collecting exhibits and sells donated stamps to provide support for Boys Town programs. That's right. It has a summer camp on West Lake Okoboji, located near West Okoboji, Iowa. Don't know where that is. In 1977, Boys Town founded and continues to operate the Boys Town National Research Hospital, located at 555 North 30th Street in Omaha. Its sister hospital, Boys Town National Research Hospital West, is operated on the Boys Town campus. The NPO also operates several medical clinics in Nebraska and one in Iowa. Boys Town has grown over the years, providing care to children and families across the country. There are 9 states across the United States in Central Florida, North Florida, South Florida, Louisiana, Nebraska, Iowa, New England, Nevada, and Washington, D.C. In 2015, a former supervisor at a Boys Town group treatment home was convicted of having sex with a minor aged 17. The offender, a 32-year-old woman, was sentenced to 5 years probation. On appeal, the conviction was affirmed by the Supreme Court of Nebraska. Sorry, not Nashville, of Nebraska. Wow, 5 years probation. Also, would like to point out that SA is not just a girl problem, it is an everyone problem. Next, we're going to go to the Brown schools. Mr. and Mrs. Bert Brown. This was in Texas. Not a lot of information. Mr. and Mrs. Bert Brown founded the Brown schools in San Marcos, Texas. Mr. Brown was an accomplished writer at the time, and Mrs. Brown was a former school teacher. Their goal was to establish a school for children who had not developed normally. In newspaper articles, Mr. Brown later stated that the school started as an experiment with a dozen children and had almost miraculous growth. Almost. And it's always a really good idea to experiment with children, isn't it? Now, we're going to go to 1946, Camp Woodland Spring. Campbell Lau Miller was hired by the Dallas Salesmanship Club to run a camp for underprivileged and troubled teens. Underprivileged and troubled usually go hand in hand. Not always. Not just an underprivileged problem. It's an everyone problem. However, talk about that another time. It is unknown what credentials that Campbell Lau Miller had to run such a camp at the time. Probably none. He later went on to write a book on his experiences running the program. According to one of the program directors, the program's model was to use group therapy and peer influence on children. Now, I'm sorry, peer influence on children. Isn't there a cliche about peer pressure? Don't give in to peer pressure. Don't give in to peer pressure. Well, I can tell you firsthand, peer pressure is very much a part of the troubled teens industry, because when we get back into Sinon and we start talking about the game again, that's entirely what the game is based on, is peers pressuring each other and attacking each other and degrading each other and insulting each other and breaking each other's spirits. All right. Guys, ready for Lester Rolloff? He was a treat. Lester Rolloff incorporates the Rolloff evangelical enterprises to pursue full-time evangelism. Most notably, Rolloff preached against homosexuality, communism, television, alcohol, tobacco, drugs, gluttony, and psychology. Who else was against psychology? L. Ron Hubbard. So many parallels. So many of these with Sinon, Rolloff, Hubbard. Cults. They're all cults. Troubled Teen Industry is a cult. Just happens to be a multi-billion-dollar a year cult that destroys children. Now we're going to go into, so you see in 51, Rolloff started the enterprises. And then in 54, they started the Rolloff Homes. Okay, this is a long list, but it's very important. Lester Rolloff is a very bad man in the history of the troubled teen. Rolloff began ministering to alcoholic and homeless men, like Chuck Diedrich. During this time, he established his first mission house in 1954. He eventually added additional children's homes throughout Texas, Oklahoma, and Georgia. In 1968, he started establishing Rolloff Homes for females. Below is a list of some of the Rolloff Homes for children. Anchor Character Training Center, Harvest Baptist Church Ministries, located in Fort Dodge, Iowa. Anchor Academy, located in Havre, Montana. Van Duser, Missouri. Bethesda Home for Girls, located in Forest County, Mississippi. Calvary Boys Ranch, Boarding Academy, City of Refuge, Baptist Institute and Seminary, Calvary Baptist Church Ministries, located in Eufaula, Oklahoma. That is a lot to say. Haven of Hope Girls Academy, located in Westminster, Maryland. Now that's the second public teen industry program in Westminster, Maryland so far, and we've only gone through 3. Happiness Hill Home, located in Union, Mississippi. That doesn't sound like maybe. Heritage Boys Academy, located in Panama City, Florida. Hafsabah House Believers Baptist Church, located in Winona Lake, Indiana. Hope Children's Home, located in Tampa, Florida, and Hope's Children's Home, located in Duck Hill, Mississippi. Joshua Scott Boarding School, located in Belva, West Virginia. Jubilee Home for Ladies, located in Corpus Christi, Texas. Lighthouse Children's Home, located in Kosciuszko, Mississippi. I apologize if I butchered that. I probably did. Pearls of Promise Girls Academy in Roanoke, Alabama. Rebecca Home for Girls, located in Corpus Christi, Texas. Reclamation Ranch, located in Empire, Alabama. Shenandoah Boys Ranch, Shenandoah Girls Haven, Shenandoah Baptist Church, because there's got to be a church there. It's Rolloff. Located in Calhoun, Tennessee. Victorious Valley Homes, located in Sunset, South Carolina. William Seth Rochester Home for Children, located in Pacolet, South Carolina. Apologize. Willow Valley Boarding Academy and Camp, located in Benton, Ohio. The Ark Youth Shelter, located in Spartanburg, South Carolina. A lot of programs, right? 1958. Okay, folks, here we go. This is the big bad. The big bad to me, anyway. I've been doing a lot of research about Sinon, and I'm not usually at a loss for words, and but this place, Chuck Diedrich, wow, it's really all I have to say. And if you're interested in learning more about Sinon, there's a really good docuseries on HBO Max right now by Rory Kennedy called The Sinon Fix. There's 4 episodes. I'm not sure if there's going to be any more. I believe there might be a 5th, but I believe it's 4 episodes. It's phenomenal. It's very thorough. It definitely also holds people's feet to the fire about their behaviors. There are people, Rod Mullen is a man who ran the Punk Squad, which was their first inner Sinon troubled teen. Okay, so it was a troubled teen thing, but with Sinon, they started very early on separating, like once the lifestylers came in, and the lifestylers were non-addicts, right? So Charles Diedrich, I like to call him Chuck E. Cheese because it's Charles E. Diedrich, and he was a monster. And I can say that with comfort and confidence. And he was an alcoholic. He became very popular in AA, speaking a lot, loved the attention. So he decided that he was going to start his own program in Venice, California. And it started as Tender Loving Care, TLC. They started to expand. And when they moved into the Armory, Casa del Mar in Santa Monica, they started focusing more on heroin addicts, or dope fiends, as they were called at the time. And he brought them in, and actually, Sinon and the game seemed to work really well for these people. And it was the 50s. Then something started to happen, and people started to come hang out for weekly parties, stuff like that, and they started to join and live there, and they are called the lifestylers. And once the lifestylers started to show up, everything got really weird, because these people started to hero worship Diedrich, right? Sort of like Hubbard and Scientology. These two men, Diedrich and Hubbard, are very, to me, very parallel. I also believe that what I've seen now, Diedrich stole some ideas from Lester Rolloff and expanded on them. He also created the game because he was a very angry man. That's just my non-professional opinion on why he started the game. But it was really popular in Los Angeles. Celebrities would go there. They literally made a movie about Sinon called Sinon, and I haven't watched it. It's an old movie back from the 50s. They would get tons of great press. But this is really, Sinon is really where the troubled teen industry got its leg. It got its legs when they started taking babies and children away from their parents and sending them to the Sinon School at a completely different location from Casa del Mar. And then they had several places to now say. I don't want to get too far into the history of Sinon outside of this. I want to read this. It's very important. Sinon was founded by Charles E. Chuck Diedrich Sr. as a drug rehabilitation program. Diedrich was an alcoholic high school dropout who was inspired by utopian notions put forth by Henry David Thoreau and B.F. Skinner. And can I just say how that man perverted the beautiful words of Thoreau and Skinner is, it just speaks to his character to me. In Sinon, members were required to take part in a practice known as the game. The game is what is commonly seen as the beginning of attack therapy. It is the advent of attack therapy, where one member would be forced to talk about themselves and endure harsh criticisms by their peers. Members were encouraged to be critical of everything about each other and use harsh language during these attack therapy sessions. The game eventually turned into 72-hour sessions that Diedrich himself would later admit was brainwashing. The game was often used to pressure members to submit to Diedrich's will, including having members abort pregnancies, undergo vasectomies, and commit violent acts. Diedrich also performed weekend retreats that non-Sinon members would pay to attend. These retreats were called the Trip, which was referred to as a combination of group psychotherapy, mass hypnosis, and mysticism with a dash of old-fashioned spiritual revival. These weekend retreats would use experienced game players to turn on various trippers to force them to confess their tales of drugs, the R word, crime, etc., that would keep them awake for most of the night in order to complete. This would leave them disoriented and sleep deprived for the next day's activities. If they completed the homework, this would also give the conductors of the trip ammunition to use in the game. Loved getting ammunition for the game. Napping and sleeping during this retreat was discouraged, so the fatigue would wear down the members' defenses. Music, guided meditation, sleep deprivation, and the game was used throughout the weekend retreat to break people down. These retreats were enormously successful for Sinon and netted over $500 in their second year of running them. The process used in these retreats were later duplicated and used in popular self-help training by groups such as Erhard Seminars Training, EST, Lightspring, and troubled teen industry programs such as Sidu, the Worldwide Association of Specialty Programs, better known as WASP programs, like the Academy at Ivy Ridge, which is the center of the documentary The Program on Netflix, which I encourage everyone to watch. Thank you, Kathleen, for that. Let's see. And various TTI spin-offs. Sinon also created schools for their members' children, where the children were separated from their parents, required to live in a regimented lifestyle and engage in Sinon activities geared towards children. Children were required to play a version of the game known as complaint meeting. Although Sinon fell out of favor in the public eye and was disbanded, there were several spin-off troubled teen programs that were created. Daytop Village, Sidu, Phoenix House, Senecor Foundation, and the Seed, but I'm not sure why that's not on here, which is fine because it is the next one. No, it's not. Daytop. Okay. Daytop Village. Now, this is another like Rolloff. This is another religious program, but they also took from cinema. So it was founded by Monsignor William B. O'Brien and Daniel Harold Casriel as a drug and alcohol rehabilitation center for adults. Prior to Daytop Village, Casriel had spent time in Sinon in 1962 and was so impressed that he gave several Sinon members funding to start a community on the East Coast. This was the beginning of Daytop Village. The methods used at Daytop were heavily based on Sinon, such as their own version of the game or attack group therapy. Eventually, Daytop expanded to over 50 locations. While most of the locations cater to adults, there are at least 2 prep schools for adolescents. One notable alumnus, Joe Ricci, went on to found Elon School. Elon is another monster. Okay, now we're going to get into the Mormons. And I would like to start this little blurb by letting everybody know or reminding those who don't know that there are over 100 troubled teen industry programs within the state of Utah because they have the lightest regulations of any state in the country, of course. Okay, during his undergraduate studies at BYU, Brigham Young University, Larry Dean Olson was promised $90 to teach survival skills without modern gear to his fellow students. After an influx of students showed up for his month-long course, the school increased his pay to continue these courses. So this is the beginning of the wilderness camp. The university noticed that students had unexplained improvement in their school performance after the course. This caused the university officials and Olson teamed up to start offering these excursions to failing BYU students. For the failing students, they were offered a chance of readmission if they learned survival skills and went on a month-long backpacking trip through the Utah desert with Olson. These experimental expeditions, are what many believe gave birth to the wilderness program industry. Yes, I believe that. Most directly, one BYU student, Steve Cardasano dropped out of BYU and used many of Larry Dean Olson's ideas to establish several problematic, troubled teen wilderness programs, which in turn spin off wilderness programs and open. Now, this is all starting to come together in the 50s and 60s. Now we go to the Hyde School. The Hyde School was founded by Joe Gould in 1966. Joe Gould previously worked as an educator and has a degree in business and math. Hyde is marketed as a behavior modification program for teenagers with emotional and behavioral problems and caters to children between the ages of 14 to 18. Throughout its operation, Hyde School and its founder, Joe Gould, have been the subject of allegations of racism and abuse. Most notably, many survivors have spoken up over social media about the conditions of the school. A tracking project by survivors found over 150 former students of Hyde had stopped living between the years of 1999 and 2021. Many of the deaths were attributed to unaliving themselves and substance-related complications. Throughout the years, allegations of emotional, physical, and psychological abuse have been alleged by Hyde survivors. Although they have catered to troubled kids for 55 years, they do not employ a single licensed psychologist or therapist. Not one. Instead of using evidence-based methods, Hyde School attempts to address the children's problems through Gould's character building concept. Let's see. Gould has often stepped into controversy by writing articles about his negative opinions about the BIPOC community. For example, in an article titled "Are Blacks and Whites Really Equal?" I'm so sorry to read this. Gould states, "I have worked deeply with the potential of 5,000 kids to have confidence in what I have found." You know, I'm not even going to read this because that's disgusting. Let's see. Hyde still hails him as the founder and hero of the Hyde philosophy on their website. In 2021, Gould was exposed for making derogatory comments about how a woman at his school could not be a victim of legitimate R if she didn't fight back. After retiring in his elder years, Gould's son, Malcolm Gould, took over the management of the school. Sidu. Sidu is Sinon's. In 1967, Mel and Brigitte Wasserman founded Sidu Educational Services in California. Mel Wasserman had previously sponsored recovering addicts at nearby Sinon and highly regarded Charles E. Diedrich. The name Sidu, really crazy, was thought to be an acronym for Charles E. Diedrich University. Several Sinon acolytes worked at Sidu, such as Bill Lane, who was one of Sinon's first and youngest members. In fact, Dr. Frank Sikis wrote an endorsement letter of Sidu in 1972, which acknowledged that Mel Wasserman had experience with Sinon and molded Sidu's therapy after it. When Sinon later fell out of favor in the public eye due to its criminal activities, Mel Wasserman would claim that the name Sidu had nothing to do with Sinon and instead stood for see yourself as you are and do something about it. The average time that children would attend Sidu was 2.5 years. The program did not believe in the use of medicine or most traditional therapy. Punishment such as hard labor, isolation, attack group sessions, etc. was often used. At least 3 times a week, students were required to attend rap sessions, which were attack pseudo-psychology sessions led by untrained staff. Though these were very similar to Sinon's game, students were also required to attend multi-day workshops called Provoc, similar to Sinon's The Trip. Sidu would later branch out and open up multiple schools in California and Idaho, until their closure in 2005. Multiple Sidu spin-off programs were created by former staff and students, and some continue to operate to this day using the same structure and methods as the original Sidu. I would like to mention that Sidu is one of the programs that our very outspoken survivor advocate, Paris Hilton, was sent to by her parents. 1970, beginning of the Elon School. Not sure. We'll cover the Elon School more thoroughly because it's important. It's a really bad place. So Elon School was founded in 1970 by psychiatrist Gerald Davidson, investor David Goldberg, and college dropout Joseph Ricci. Joseph Ricci was a former heroin addict and former resident of Daytop Village, a direct Sinon spin-off program that we just talked about. In Elon's infancy, it housed primarily adults with a sole emphasis on addiction. It wasn't until later that it started opening its doors to younger children. It marketed itself as a boarding school for troubled teens between the ages of 12 and 19. 19 is adult. Make that make sense. And eventually expanded to several buildings and locations. The average stay at Elon was 2 years. However, there were exceptions where some residents would have to stay up to 3 to 4 years. Elon School would later become a member of the National Association of Therapeutic Schools and Programs, NATSAP. NATSAP is, I have found out what my programs were under the umbrella of. Elon School was widely recognized for its Synanon-like methods, which included attack therapy, public humiliation, and abuse. Much like Synanon, residents were pressured and bullied into false confessions during their versions of the game. One notable example of this became a national news story. Michael Skakel, if anyone's heard of him, nephew of Ethel Kennedy, was sent to Elon during his teenage years. During an intense session of forced boxing, he was confronted about the taking of the life of his neighbor, Martha Moxley. After each round, the staff would ask if he unalived her. Each round, he would say no. After much physical abuse, he said, "I don't know." He was later convicted almost solely based on the perceived coerced confession in 2002. At the time, there was not as much public understanding about these troubled teen schools or how coerced confessions were often elicited from children. After spending over 10 years in prison, Michael Skakel was eventually able to overturn his conviction in 2013. 11 years. Wait, no, that's not right. Yes, it was right. 11 years. I don't math. Elon School was eventually closed in 2011. Elon School was also featured in popular media in the documentary The Last Stop on Amazon Prime, Children of Darkness, produced by PBS in 1983, and a webcomic named Joe versus Elon School, created by a former resident. I want to check that out. There's also some good documentaries about Elon on YouTube. Now we're going to go to the seed. Arthur Barker. Easy to say. The seed was founded by Arthur Robert Barker in 1970 as a drug rehabilitation center. During its time in operation, the seed had locations throughout Florida. Prior to his time at Seed, Barker was a stand-up comedian and recovering alcoholic with no prior qualifications or credentials. He modeled the seed directly based on Sinon, often engaging in harsh, long group attack therapy similar to the game. Children were forced to sit in metal chairs for 12 hours a day for 7 days a week, engaging in these rap sessions. During these sessions, children were berated and bullied into giving false confessions, often exaggerating and outright lying about their experiences with crimes, drugs, etc. It was estimated that only approximately 30% of residents actually struggled with addiction. 30%. That's a really bad statistic. The seed eventually earned negative press after a 1974 U.S. Senate report that evaluated its techniques compared it to North Korean brainwashing techniques used on prisoners of war. I just want that sentence to sink in, and I'm going to read it again. The seed eventually earned negative press after a 1974 U.S. Senate report that evaluated its techniques, compared it to North Korean brainwashing techniques used on prisoners of war, on children. Apologize for the emotion. More criticisms came from the high unaliving rate of attendees and abuse allegations. In 2001, Barker retired and dissolved the corporation. One of the most notable spin-offs of the seed was Straight Inc., which was seen as the gentler version of the seed. Now, knowing what I know about Straight Inc., if they're gentler, the seed was bad. Okay. This here is the Judge Rottenberg Educational Center, founded in 1971 by Matthew Israel. Similar to Provo Canyon School, it is a behaviorist program that is inspired by Skinnerian ideas. I don't know what Skinnerian ideas is. Give me 1 second. I am going to write that down. Oh, I love my ADD. I saw the word shock. That's never good. JRC relies heavily on aversion therapy with aversive. Okay, let's start the sentence over again. JRC relies heavily on aversion therapy with aversives such as contingent food programs, long-term restraints, sensory deprivation, and electric shock. The program is well known for its use of the graduated electronic accelerator, the GED, a device that was designed by Matthew Israel that administered electric shocks to the residents through remote control. Abuse allegations throughout the years have surfaced, including security videos showing staff tying an autistic child face down the 4-point board and shocking him 31 times at the highest setting. The child was later hospitalized with third-degree burns and acute stress disorder. I wonder why. At least 6 residents have died. I say that word. At least 6 residents have died at the institution since it was founded. There have been repeated attempts to shut down the center by autism rights advocates, disability rights advocates, and the human rights advocates, including the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network, Disability Rights International, and Community Alliance for the Ethical Treatment of Youth. I know I'm getting emotional, but that's because I have something tied to this. Provo Canyon School. This is another school that our sister advocate, Paris Houghton, attended. Provo Canyon School was founded in 1971 by Dr. Robert Christ and Jack Williams. Initially, it was a boys-only school with a campus located in Provo, Utah. Later, they expanded to open a girls program in nearby Orem, Utah, which later moved to Springfield, Utah in the mid-2000s. Provo Canyon School has been marketed as residential treatment center for children between the ages of 8 and 18. Throughout the years, Provo Canyon School has changed hands several times. Charter Medical Corporation bought Provo Canyon School in 1986. After filing bankruptcy, Charter would eventually sell the school to Universal Health Systems in 2000. Under UHS, Provo Canyon School would spend many years as a member of the National Association of Therapeutic Schools and Programs, NATSAP, before they canceled their own membership. Unlike many troubled teen programs, the use of medication was encouraged. One of the founders, Dr. Christ, was a psychiatrist and was directly responsible for the medicating of children at the school. Many survivors of Provo Canyon School have alleged that they were inappropriately and often over-medicated during their time at the school. The use of injectable medication for the purpose of sedating or calming children has also been confirmed. In 2019, a public records request revealed that a 14-year-old foster care child was injected 17 times, including with Haldol, and restrained over 30 times in just a 3-month period. That's torture. Allegations of abuse have plagued Provoc Canyon School since its inception and continue to the current day. In its early years, children were punished with methods such as the hair dance, where children were pulled around the room by their hair, solitary confinement, forced to stand facing a wall for hours. After a lawsuit in the 1980s, they were forced to change their methods slightly. Just slightly. They were no longer allowed to do the hair dance and were told that solitary confinement should no longer be used as punishment. Many survivors of Provoc Canyon School, including most notably Paris Hilton, would later publicly state that the use of solitary confinement as punishment has continued throughout the years. Dozens of survivors have come forward throughout Provoc Canyon School's operation to make allegations of physical, emotional, and sexual abuse. In fact, police, DHS, and court records detail alarming allegations of rape, physical abuse, and harsh punishment that appear to corroborate the survivor's story. Many spin-off programs came out of Provoc Canyon School since its inception, including but not limited to Worldwide Association of Specialty Programs, better known as WASP, Discovery Academy, Logan River Academy, and Silverado Academy. Here we go. Straight Inc., 1976. By Mel and Betty Sembler in Florida after their son attended a Sinon spin-off group called The Seed. It was created as a drug treatment program for children ages 12 to 21. Straight Inc. modeled much of its program after The Seed. It expanded quickly, and throughout its operation, it had a total of 43 locations in various states such as California, Connecticut, Delaware, Florida, Georgia, Kentucky, Massachusetts, Maryland, Michigan, New Hampshire, New York, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, South Carolina, Texas, Virginia, and Washington. Straight Inc. would engage in rap sessions similar to Sinon's game and use positive peer pressure techniques to try to pressure members into giving up drugs. Positive peer pressure. Throughout its years of operation, Straight was plagued by lawsuits and abuse allegations. In fact, a total of $15 million in lawsuits were settled against Straight throughout the existence until it finally closed in 1993. Kids Center of America was a later spin-off of Straight Inc. and utilized much of these same Sinon tactics as its predecessor. We go into Universal Health Services, Inc., 1979. Founded in 1979, Universal Health Services, Inc. provides hospital and healthcare services. It is based in King of Prussia, Pennsylvania. In 2020, its annual revenues were $11.6 billion. That's one group. $11.6 billion a year from parents who are marks. Parents of the marks. Children are just the units. They're just the units to be sold. Parents are the bread and butter of these industries. In 2000, UHS purchased Provoc Canyon School. Oh, wait, I forgot this line. The purchase included 11 acute care hospitals and 4 behavioral health hospitals. On July 10th, 2020, the Department of Justice announced a $122 million fraudulent claims case with Universal Health Services, Inc., UHS of Delaware, and Turning Point Care Center, LLC, a UHS facility located in Moultrie, Georgia, have agreed to pay a combined total of $122 million to resolve alleged violations of the False Claims Act for billing for medically unnecessary inpatient behavioral health services, failing to provide adequate and appropriate services, and paying illegal inducements for federal healthcare beneficiaries. From the announcement, the government alleged that between January 2006 and December 2018, UHS's facilities admitted federal health care beneficiaries who were not eligible for inpatient or residential treatment because their conditions did not require that level of care, while also failing to properly discharge appropriately admitted beneficiaries when they no longer required inpatient care. The government further alleged that UHS's facilities billed for services not rendered, billed for improper and excessive lengths of stay, failed to provide adequate staffing, training, and or supervision of staff, and improperly using physical and chemical restraints and seclusion. In addition, UHS's facilities allegedly failed to develop and or update individual assessments and treatment plans for patients, failed to provide adequate discharge planning, and failed to provide required individual and group therapy sessions in accordance with federal and state regulations. I just would like to point out that any organization that makes $11.6 billion annually, being sued for $122 million isn't really that big of a deal. Of the $117 million to be paid by UHS to resolve these claims, the federal government will receive a total of $88 million. Why? And a total of $28 will be returned to individual states, which jointly fund state Medicaid programs. Okay. This is important. In November 2010, UHS reached an agreement in May to acquire Psychiatric Solutions for $3.1 billion. In September 2012, UHS and its subsidiaries, Keystone Education and Youth Services LLC and Keystone Marion LLC, doing business as Keystone Marion Youth Center, agreed to pay over $6.9 million to resolve allegations that they submitted false and fraudulent claims to Medicaid. So again, they just keep getting busted for not complying with state and federal regulations. On December 7th, 2016, BuzzFeed published a report detailing questionable practices within UHS psychiatric facilities. The report includes allegations of holding non-threatening patients against their will, manipulative misinterpretation of patient testimony to fit guidelines to involuntary confinement, aggressive staff layoffs, and understaffing in hospitals, needless patient deaths due to understaffing and misprescribing medication, violating a patient's right to be discharged or holding a patient without a proper documentation, and unnecessary extension of stay times to maximize Medicare payouts. UHS denied the conclusions of the report. UHS stock fell approximately 12% after publication. Only 12%. But, kids are the most important thing in this country, right? According to BuzzFeed investigative reporter Rosalind Adams, UHS responded to the report by hiring a global PR firm that offers specialized crisis management services. UHS didn't just implement a crisis PR plan, it also fired an employee that company believed to have spoken to a reporter. It sued a former employee it alleges leaked damaging internal surveillance videos. It threatened to sue other employees. At least one facility held a series of town hall meetings to warn employees from speaking with us. It conducted in-depth interviews with nearly 24 staff, then distributed a public apology that 2 of them signed. It enlisted one of the most powerful law firms in the United States. It built multiple high production value websites specifically designed to overcome the reputational damage that our report might cause. A UK subsidiary, Signet Healthcare, was the subject of a BBC investigation that found that staff had been taunting, provoking, and scaring vulnerable people. It runs 140 mental health services across the UK. 85% of its services are rated good or outstanding by our regulator. New admissions were banned at Signet Acer Clinic after the Care Quality Commission found it unsafe to use. A patient unalived herself. Others self-harm. Ligature points were found where patients could hang themselves, and too many of the staff were untrained to deal with the highly vulnerable patients in clinic. The company bought 4 inpatient units, which were previously operated by the Danshell Group in 2018. All 4 were condemned by the Care Quality Commission, which raised concerns about patients' unexplained injuries and high levels of restraint in 2019. I want to talk about that, and we're going to pause the timeline. It's Kids Center, WASP. We'll get into that later, so I'm going to stop sharing this right now. And I have a couple of small videos that I want to show you, and then we will wrap up this first portion of the origins of the TTI. I hope that it has been informational and helpful to someone out there. And again, I apologize for any of my gaffes. I haven't been recording much lately. I've been quite busy doing other things, so I can turn this on. So yeah, now I want to run this NBC News promo for Sinon from when Sinon was still a very big deal, very popular back in the day.
Back in the 1950s, when Sinon came to public attention, it was a drug and alcohol rehabilitation program.
I found an environment that was a loving environment. I found a place that was humane, and I found a place that was very firm. All of the things that I needed to change my behavior.
The organization is composed of what Sinon calls dope fiends, squares, and delinquent children, punks. Sinon educates, clothes, and feeds its members, and in return, most of them turn over their personal wealth and work for Sinon.
I think that any organization like Sinon, which convinces people that live there that it is such a superior way to live, that causes people to do anything that the organization wants them to do.
The organization has become a self-contained cradle-to-grave society with $33 million in assets. Sinon owns airplanes and boats. In 1970, smoking was forbidden. Male members had vasectomies. Pregnant women had abortions.
Had somebody given the order to a bunch of fanatics to use physical violence on me or any other kind of dissident there, I was afraid. I just had those spooky, violent vibes.
So there's that. Now I want to share a Sinon short film. This is 6 minutes, so I will turn this up to, I'm going to put this up to, let's do this at 122. Okay. By the way,
Sinon claims it's the victim of bad publicity, losing more than 100,000.
You hear Hotel California in the background. Look up this on Hotel California.
Sinon claims it's the victim of bad publicity, losing more than $100,000 in grants and contracts. Fewer addicts are being sent there. Parents are disowning their children who live there. Some filing lawsuits, charging brainwashing and torture. And a grand jury is investigating charges of child abuse. And I talked with former residents who for the first time are speaking out about Sinon. It was founded 19 years ago by a man named Chuck Dieterich.
I'm Big Brother, I'm Big Daddy, I'm all kinds of things. I wore a wonderful costume for a good many years. I look more like Buddha than Gandhi. We are an experimental society. I don't know how this is going to come out. I really don't. If I knew how it was going to come out, I would do it.
He is the driving force of Sinon, a recovered alcoholic who created a no drugs, no alcohol, no violence society for drug addicts and alcoholics who just drifted in or were sent there by parole and probation officers. They start new lives, learning trades, from mechanics to working for Sinon's business enterprises. Sinon's assets, $33 million. In recent years, Sinon began calling itself a religion. One gesture of that commitment came 3 years ago when the women joined the men and shaved their heads.
Egypt is surrounded by people.
I don't know what's going on here, so we're going to stop sharing. I apologize. I don't know. We'll do that next time. I'll save that for next time. Sorry about that. Anyways, that is going to wrap up today's video on the origins of the troubleshooting industry. We will get deeper into Sinon in the next, because I have gained a lot of information about them in the last week or so, and am very enthusiastic to share it. I wish everybody a wonderful weekend. I hope that you are all well. I appreciate everyone who watches. If you enjoyed the video, give it a like. If you didn't enjoy the video, give it a thumbs down. If you want to subscribe, feel free. If you want to share, feel free. I appreciate everybody who shows up. Bye for now. Oh, wait. And if we can just remember, do one nice thing for one person today, and we do it every day, we might change the world. Bye.